Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I hope this is a wonderful day for you. I hope you're having a terrific, and as we say, wonderfully blessed day. It is because of the mercies of God that I'm here before you today. And I'm going to talk about, after all that, the path from victim to survivor to thriver. And you see, my source here is Seeker Project 4se.org. All right. Dear God, as I sit before you to speak, I pray to you that my soul you will keep. And if I should die before I finish, I pray to you, dear God, in the name of Jesus, that any outstanding sins will be forgiven. Amen. I'm going to go right into our, our subject for today. And it is a great one. And I am just so thankful because I've been able to find something that's great and that will be helpful to each and every one of us. So many of us have been into, so many things have happened in our lives. And some of the things that have happened, we would not even want to talk about ever again. Some things we haven't told, devastating things that have happened because we don't want to. Well, even though we remember it, we don't want to bring it up to somebody else because it could even aggravate and enrage someone else to act upon something that happened decades ago. So sometimes it's best to just not say anything about it to someone else, but have, first of all, we have to have peace of mind and be resolved within our minds that we are over it and that we are moving beyond our past. We're moving beyond our past. We've moved beyond our past, many of us. The path from victim to survivor to thriver. There are so many things, as I have said, that can happen in a lifetime. There are so many things that people really don't know. They wouldn't understand. They would ask questions and all of that. But what is that? There's a saying, walk a mile in my shoes. And then some people still wouldn't understand. So moving beyond your past, the path from victim to survivor to thriver. We need this today. We need this today. And I am just so grateful because there are people who understand. There are people who counsel people. There are people who've been through it that are counseling people, like many of us helping other people to get along and get with their lives, get along in their lives and be able to get past all of these terrifying things that have happened in their lives. And I'm going to bring this to you. It's a great piece. And I believe it was 2022 that this piece was released. Moving beyond your past is difficult, and we know that sometimes it's difficult to move beyond our past. Sometimes it's very difficult. The path from victim to survivor to thriver is a strategy to help you overcome the roadblocks that keep you locked in harmful thinking patterns. And sometimes we can be in those for years if we don't get some help. And then it takes some work, but it is possible. You can do it. It does take work. It does take work. It does take work. Take it from a witness, okay? A living witness, all right? It does take work, but you can come from victim to survivor to thriver. You're looking at one. Praise the Lord. Hallelujah. We know specific roles can dominate our psyche. If you stay in an unhealthy mindset long enough, and we have to listen to this, and you've heard me talk about these things before. Oh, before I go any further, happy birthday to my favorite sister, Cleester Polk. Coleman. Happy birthday, sister. Happy birthday. I love you. And she's already heard from me early this morning and in a text, a voice message. And then I've already talked with her and I'll probably talk with her again today. But I want everybody to know that this is Cleasta's birthday. And I am so grateful. And you know, my sisters are my favorite sisters. Cleasta's is my favorite sister. Maritha's my favorite sister. Natalie, even though she's gone into eternity, she is my favorite sister. So you know me by now, don't you? Okay. Now we're getting back into uh, being coming from a victim to a survivor and a thriver. And there are millions out here in this world. We're not alone, okay? We know specific roles can dominate our psyche. If you stay in an unhealthy mindset long enough, it will uh, it will alter the psyche structures of the brain. If you stay in that psyche long enough, it'll alter the psychic structures of the brain. Now, that's the reason harmful perspectives are hard to break. You hear that? That's the reason that harmful perspectives are hard to break. This is really, really good. So, the first step in increasing our health and well being is going from victim to survivor. The goal is to thrive, not just survive. And you know, I've talked about uh, being a thriver, not just a survivor, but thriving after surviving. I've talked about this. So this goes right with what I've talked about before. And I am so glad for this. Now we're going to move beyond our past, moving beyond your past. Our culture has three prominent roles: the victim, the survivor, and those who thrive. Three prominent roles according to this piece right here. These three mindsets are on a continuum. The least healthy is the victim, and the healthiest is the mindset of a thriver. The survivor role is the middle ground. There aren't hard lines between these roles. It's more like a rainbow with shades between the primary colors. You hear that? It's more like a rainbow with shades between the primary colors. Each of these mindsets has particular characteristics that define its boundaries. To move from one to the next, you must go beyond the limits of any role. To move from one to the next, you must go beyond the limits of any role. It's possible to get stuck in a thinking pattern and not realize it because these roles do not relate directly to your socioeconomic status. People with lots of money are still victims, and that is so true. And you know, we've said that, and even we know that money does not solve every problem. There are people who have so much money they will never spend it, and they are unhappy and unsure of life, untrusting because they've been victimized. It might not have been that they've been beat or anything like that. They could have been misused for their wealth. There's so many things happen in this world. So many things can happen. But even though you might have billions and billions of dollars, you know yourself that you still have some kind of thing that's bugging you. Similarities between the victim and the survivor. That's where we're going now. When we assume the position of a victim, the ego is in control. You hear that? Moving beyond your past is the key. Pushing past mindset boundaries means getting out of our comfort zone. It takes some serious inner work. Both outlooks live on autopilot, which is how the ego stays in control. You hear that? Something happens that causes us to adopt a victim mentality. If we want more freedom and peace, we must learn to survive. You hear that? If we want more freedom and peace, we must learn to survive. And thank you so much for being with me. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hopefully, it is coming through. Let me check my sound here. I want to check my sound, so just check it. Okay, it's working. Just wanted to make sure. Okay, we must learn to survive if we want more freedom. I'm repeating this, I think. We must learn to survive. Then, at some point, we learn to thrive. Each step means we are present more than on autopilot, okay? Each step. Just as long as you keep moving, okay? As long as you keep moving. There has to be some movement and there has to be some forward movement, all right? Unfortunately, many people live their entire lives with this mindset. So, to make it to a survivor's position when they learn healthy ways to handle the underlying issues, some make it to the survivor's position when they learn healthy ways to handle the underlying issues. The real victors are those who can learn to thrive. They are not just surviving, but thriving. Hey, past surviving, thriving, okay? So let's look at roles and mindsets. We're going to look at roles and mindsets right here. Okay, what is a victim mindset? We're going through it today, aren't we? What is a victim mindset? A victim mindset uses unhealthy methods to handle underlying issues. What does a victim mindset do? A victim mindset uses unhealthy methods to handle underlying issues, causing pain and fear. So these coping methods of the ego are harmful, you hear that? Because they harm others while making the underlying issues, okay? While masking, the underlying issues. So listen to this. I'm going to do this victim mindset again. A victim mindset uses unhealthy methods to handle underlying issues, causing pain and fear. These coping methods of the ego are harmful because they harm others while masking the underlying issues. So there's still some issues under there, okay? Underlying issues. So the fear and anxiety of the unresolved problems leak through as unhealthy coping processes. So these strategies manifest as harmful behaviors and harmful repercussions in their lives. It also affects everyone in their circle of influence. Everyone, okay? So remember, when we're going through, we're not going through alone because we have people, we have family, we have friends, acquaintances, people who are concerned about us. So we're just not going through this alone, okay? It also affects everyone in their circle of influence. This differs from someone who suffers harm. People can be victims of crime without thinking of themselves as victims. How about that? Moving beyond your past means dealing with the fear and misery that keeps us locked in these roles. If we can face and deal with the underlying issues, we can move on. The path from victim to survivor to thriver. We can move on if we can deal with the underlying issues. So, what is a survivor mindset? The survivor mindset is the frame of reference when someone is learning to overcome unhealthy coping strategies. It takes some people months of hard work, to reach this point, but it is worth it. It is easy to slip back into these bad habitual coping tactics when stressed. You can slip back. And we've seen some people just slip back into states of depression, anxiety. It is just hard. You have to really work with it, okay? One of the main similarities between the victim and the survivor is the tendency to slip back into harmful coping tactics when under stress. There is often a link between this slippery slope and some addiction. All right? Now, what does it mean to thrive? Here we go. What does it mean to thrive? Aren't you happy today that this is another day? September the 17th, 2024. Cleaster's birthday. What does it mean to thrive? And I'm going to ask you if you would share this. Somebody needs this. You might have 2,000, 3,099 people on your list, what they call the friend list on Facebook, or followers on YouTube, or on Twitch, Twitter, X, Africa TV, but that last one in that 99 might be the one that needs this. So please share. I really appreciate you for sharing. I thank you so much for being here with me. You're wonderful. I am so happy that you are here with me today. What does it mean to thrive? People who find happiness have taken the path from victim to survivor to thriver. Thriving means we live by intent and can better handle our current situation no matter what. When we reach this point, the ego has the least amount of control. When we get to that thriver position, the ego has the least amount of control, okay? So our culture defines thriving as accumulating wealth, but having more money and stuff does not make us happy. You can succeed and thrive when you have very few possessions and material wealth. Many of us know that, don't we? Thriving is flourishing, which means to grow or develop healthily or vigorously. Okay? Thriving is flourishing, which means to grow or develop healthily or vigorously. It results from a positive mindset, not our surroundings or our circumstances. Next, we're going to go to the section that says taking the path from victim to survivor to thriver. Both mindsets result from adopting strategies to cover up unresolved issues or trauma. The ego adopts these methods to remain in control. Most times, we do not choose these strategies on a conscious level. You hear that? Most of the time, we don't choose these strategies on a conscious level. It's the ego mechanism that grasps something handy it can use. The ego is very strong. We know about that, don't we? We could say, "Oh, she has a big ego. He has a big ego." That ego is strong, and it could be a very negative or very positive thing. Okay? So the first step is to find out which of these strategies you use. Then we need to face issues that made us pick these methods. It's the best way to proceed from victim to survivor to thriver. The goal is to deal with the thought scripts that hold us hostage. And you know how these thoughts go through our minds. And these some thoughts come to our mind, and you say, where did that come from? Just out of the blue, what's coming to your mind? I'm telling you, we need to face issues and methods. It's the best way to proceed from being a survivor to a thriver. We're going to come from a victim to a survivor to a thriver. So the goal is to deal with the thought scripts that hold us hostage. Many of these are conceptions. It means moving beyond your past to a better future. Oh yes, isn't this good? Now continue come listen, here I go. Confronting your fears takes confronting your fears takes courage, but the goal is worth the effort not only for you, but for everyone in your sphere of life. This journey involves all levels of your mind and spirit. That's heavy, isn't it? You can only do this if you use tools to identify harmful thought scripts and then delete and replace them with healthy scripts. This is serious inner work. You can't take it lightly. It takes work. You being a thriver, coming from a victim to a survivor, and now you're thriving. It takes work, don't you? But hey, it is possible because you have made it. We have made it. The victim typology is hard to see when looking from the inside out. Other people can see it, but your ego hides it from you to justify its actions. The term of this is fixation. Our attention is under the control of the ego. All we want to do is fulfill the needs of the ego. That ego is strong and big, isn't it? An excellent tool to help uncover the fixation is the Enneagram. Okay? Every personality type has its own weaknesses. Every personality type has its own weaknesses. So that ENNEAGRAM. And if I can get to the definition without changing pages, I'm not going to do that. But it's ENNEAGRAM. You can look that up, okay? Every personality type has its own weaknesses, which lead to this unhealthy mindset. There are three primary schools of thought about choosing an unhealthy strategy. We're going to go into those. A, the fixation relates to their dominant personality type. Oh, we're getting into personality types. Now, if you've been watching Point of View at any time, you have heard me talk over and over again about personality types. A, the fixation relates to their dominant personality type. If this is the case, they are at the lowest mental health level. So they identify with the typology of the primary personality type because it is the most comfortable or familiar. Hmm. B, the fixation occurs at the point of disintegration. All right. The fixation occurs at the point of disintegration. Oh, that's interesting. The ego controls thinking when we slide downward into unhealthy thinking patterns. Below, we have a graph, and so I don't know whether I'm going to try to show that or not. Below is a graph showing each personality direction when it moves toward destruction thinking. So, for example, when it moves toward destructive thinking, okay? For example, if your dominant personality type is an achiever at point 3, you would move to point 9. Let me see if I can get over here and share this with you. Oh, but I've given you see where you can find this. So just save time. And you can go there yourself because it's on here, the source, the information. C, the ego selects one or more strategies by random. Here, the ego picks one or more strategies without regard for personality type. It could relate to the specific trauma. Sometimes it is a strategy they know because of family or social exposure. They observe it. So the ego adopts a way to cope. It's the case over 50% of the time. You hear that? It's the case over 50% of the time where it's a strategy talking about the ego. It could relate to specific trauma. Sometimes it is a strategy they know because of family or social exposure. They observe it, so the ego adopts a way to cope. It's the case over 50% of the time. It sees someone else use a tactic and adopts it. Oh, that sounds familiar. When the ego controls thinking, it will pick any handy tactic, anything it thinks will work. It may have nothing to do with your personality type. It is more likely to be a random choice, something you've seen someone else use. Hmm. Regardless of why we pick these tactics, they are always a bad aid to cover up fear and anger. It might be an aid, okay, but it's a bad aid. They could be a band aid, okay? All right. And not a physical one, all right? But it could be just to cover up the fear or anger, a temporary solution, all right? So find a victim typology from the list below, and you can go to this site and go to the list below, okay, which is familiar. Find out what emotions are attached. Here is where you begin the path from victim to survivor to thriver. The best approach to this is to review the typologies below and find those that seem familiar. Then look at your primary Enneagram personality type to see if it aligns with the type where you disintegrate into unhealthy thinking. To do this, you must find out your Enneagram type. All right. Chances are you learned the unhealthy tactics you use from your family or people you spend a lot of time with. And you know that is really, really, really true. However, you can pick them up from any social interaction, even if the strategy doesn't align with your personality type. You use it because it is similar. Ooh, wee. Someone with a lengthy history in the victim role becomes the master of many tactics. When we use a particular thinking pattern, we normalize it, making it hard to identify. However, it's most often the one they began using first. Whoa, whoa, whoa. The one they began using first. 9 unhealthy coping strategies. 9 unhealthy coping strategies. So below, we have 9 primary healthy, unhealthy coping techniques of the victim. Coming up, we are going to talk about these. These are the basic typologies which exist in several variations. So here's how to use the list. First, scan them all and see which one seems too familiar. Use your spiritual journal to talk about it. Ask yourself how you use it. Find examples of when you have used it, then list the consequences. That's an assignment, isn't it? It's important to remember these typologies may or may not correspond with your personality type. Remember that, okay? You can't use victim typologies to identify your dominant personality type. Please read through them with an open mind. Determine if one or more are familiar. If you use more than one of these strategies, select the one you use the most. If you have a long history of using the mindset of a victim, you'll likely have more than one. These are the signs of fixation, the wake up call for those ready to move and remove the unhealthy tactics of the ego. You must know your Enneagram personality profile type and instinctual stack, okay? We recommend, and here's a recommendation, The Wisdom of the Enneagram by Don Richard Rico and Russ Hudson. Then, find the Enneagram personality type that corresponds with your victim typology. Compare this to your Enneagram profile. Is this your dominant personality or the type in the position of disintegration? Now, if so, use this as the starting point for your inner work. For your inner work, okay? The harmful coping mechanisms can overlap or be used together with others so that you may find your variation in these things. You will notice there are similarities between the victim and the survivor regarding the use of these unhealthy coping tactics. I think this is really, really giving us some good information. It's breaking it down so that we can understand it. And then the good thing about it is I've supplied the source so you can go there and read it for yourself and do this exercise for yourself. You can find out for yourself and whoever you share this with, but I'm telling you, somebody else needs this. They really need this, okay? Number one, decision paralysis. Decision paralysis. Now, what are we talking about here? 9 unhealthy coping strategies, okay? The first one is decision paralysis. Now, what is decision paralysis? You give in or refuse to contribute to making the big decisions. If the significant decision is wrong, you didn't make it. If it was correct, you didn't get to let your opinion be a part of the winning formula. It's giving up control to be the victim. It's giving up control to be the victim. Thank you so much for being with me. Thank you. So, if you're a type 8 challenger, this would be your latest likely thing to do. You are generally decisive, so not deciding turns you into the victim. If you are a type 2 helper, now remember the exercise we had, that chart at the up at the what I talked about. When you go to this site, you'll see that and you'll see what these numbers are, okay? So if you are a type 2 helper, your direction of disintegration is at type 8. So when this occurs, you talk you take control and become domineering, even hostile. My goodness. So if you are a personality type 8, the antidote is allowing others to decide. It isn't all or nothing. You don't have to choose or refuse. There is a middle ground. For instance, if you are a 2, this translates to needy, self-seeking behavior. Wow. Number two, excuse maker. You are the master of excuses. These talking about unhealthy, okay? You are the master of excuses, and you have such a deep and diverse catalog that people often believe you, and you think it too. You are a master of circular logic. So you can find a reason not to try or fail and then explain it away. So it also has a lot to do with denial. Your excuses help you deny your genuine desires. As long as you can keep spinning the reasons, it works. But eventually, you realize it makes you the victim. It robs you of your personal power. Personal power. This unhealthy coping mechanism is a favorite of all personalities, primarily type 1. Number 3, self doubt and self pity. Talking about unhealthy traits, okay? We're coming from the victim to the survivor to the thriver, okay? And these are unhealthy things that can be going on with you that could hold you back. Number 3, self doubt and self pity. You seem to like you seem like you're half asleep. You purposely run yourself down emotionally and physically. This way others need to feel sorry for you. If you are not having a significant crisis, you'll receive the ones from your past. My Lord, or you'll relive the ones from your past. So it's more than a lack of self confidence. You break things to make sure they don't work. You run everything from the quality and quantity of your work to relationships. Self doubt becomes self destruction. The worst part is you find a sense of fulfillment in being inept. So, uh, if self doubt isn't painful enough, you resort to self destructive behaviors. It's the crown achievement of the victim mentality. Next, number 4, the blamer. We are familiar with all of these, aren't we? It's all about not taking responsibility and shifting it to others. Almost everyone with the victim mentality uses this one to some extent. Refusing to accept accountability and commitment leads to blaming others. It is one of the classic harmful coping mechanisms that are easy to spot. Talking about harmful coping mechanisms, okay? You will be blamed for something if you're around one at a time, okay? This strategy is prevalent in our society. You will be blamed for something if you're around one at any time. This strategy is prevalent in our society. Politicians use it so blatantly that we don't recognize it. Oh, yes, we do. Not the average eye, I guess. These tactics can be overt or covert and hidden. For example, allowing others to make significant decisions is a subtle way to blame. If things don't work out, you can blame them. You find enjoyment in placing blame. It makes them responsible if things go wrong. But if things go okay, you can jump in and take credit. An overt external example would be those with extremist religious beliefs. It gives the chosen ones, and they have it quote, end quote, special privileges to blame. Now, you can blame in the name of your imaginary friend. Now your enjoyment is righteous. You blame people for being poor or born of any other ethnic group but yours. Another more overt aspect of the inward focus is punishing yourself. You find creative ways to blame yourself for things you can't control, like the weather. All the better if you make a mistake. But some people find fault by looking in the mirror. It's extreme, isn't it? They don't like what they see based on some unattainable cultural standards. Then they engage in self harming behavior to punish themselves. This is serious. This is really, really serious, okay? We're talking about moving from the victim to the survivor and then the thriver, okay? Five, energy vampire. We talk about unhealthy coping mechanisms. Energy vampire. You emotionally drain yourself. Then you become so needy that you suck the emotional energy out of others. The ego dominates your thoughts. Your personality type doesn't matter. The inner critic turns up negative self talk volume. You feel entitled to anything that you want because you want it. So here you focus on negativity, seeking positive people to bring them down to your level. No one knows where the energy goes. You siphon it off because it does not satisfy you. The victim purposely lives in the past. They pick the events where they were a victim, then pull that negative energy with them into the present. My. Number seven, resentment deluxe. Resentment deluxe. We're talking about unhealthy coping mechanisms, okay? If someone else has something you resent, them if someone else has something, you resent them even if you don't want what they have. Do you know anybody like that? Read that again. Okay? Listen. If someone else has something, you resent them even if you don't want what they have. People are like this. You know they are. So you resent people who have achieved things you don't want. But if they have something you want, you resent them all the more. This negativity is palpable. Many victims use this to support their attitudes of resentment. They will drive through neighborhoods, looking at houses and cars, while recalling and feeling resentment and scorn for everything they see. And have you seen people drive through your neighborhood? Or have you driven through people's neighborhoods? And I hope you didn't have a negative thing like these people had in mind. Sometimes you drive through to see if different people live there. Just like when I go home, might go down Elm Street to see the improvements and see what's changed there, but not going through there to try to look down on people and be envious of people. I thank God I'm not there at that stage, okay? So they will drive through neighborhoods, looking at houses and cars, while feeling resentment and scorn for everything. The ego enjoys this. If you are an Enneagram type 7, this can be destructive. That's because type 7s live for variety, so they find more things to resent. Number 8, worry addict. You, your outlook is beyond pessimistic. Talking about a worry addict. You're always talking about worst case scenarios. Because of this, You empathize with every disaster. What's worse, you think and you look for crises and disasters. Worrying about things dominates your time because you expect bad things to happen. This thinking makes you a victim of things that haven't happened. Worrying leads to the use of other unhealthy strategies. It becomes addictive by triggering the fight, flight, or freeze reaction. Yes, it creates a high and disconnects us from our higher thinking centers. The downside is this leads to prior decision making and poor decision making. That's the bad part. The downside is that this leads to poor decision making. The worst thing you can do during a disaster is obsess about adverse outcomes. Instead, you should look for solutions, and that is so true. Number nine, self destructive. Many physical and emotional triggers push people to self destructive behaviors. The pain of any kind drives people to seek a way out. Drinking and drugs provide a temporary oasis from pain, but cause other health problems that start a vicious cycle. Okay, that should have been one sentence, I believe. Drinking and drugs provide a temporary oasis from pain, but cause other health problems that start a vicious cycle. You seek relief, but don't or can't face what is causing it. Oh, this is something. When you don't feel good about yourself, one unhealthy tactic is engaging in harmful behavior. Punishing or harming yourself is a vicious cycle. Self destructive behavior can be conscious and deliberate. It can also be the result of a habitual subconscious trigger. It triggers physical and mental addictions, risky behavior, affairs, or other self defeating behaviors. You destroy yourself and your life by running away from the pain that started the cycle. You must face the pain. It may never go away, but you can keep it from holding you in a victim's mindset. Oh my goodness. Now we go to the next section here, holding on to the victim mindset. Third world countries have a small percentage of individuals who identify as victims. Underdeveloped countries have societies that are more cohesive and caring than the West. You find a larger percentage of people who identify with the role of the victim is in the West. Most victims relate to being taken advantage of, lied to, abused, or betrayed. These events become the focal aspect of their identity. We hold on to these roles because they are comfortable. The dominant cultural narrative reinforces it to dominate our thoughts and our values. Religions control half of the population, so they have a critical mass effect on our modern societies. And it depends on whether the religion is righteous and you're worshiping the true and the living God. This is point of view. This is my point of view. The cultural narrative in the West values competition above compassion. It promises a caste system of race, ethnicity, and social and economic inequality. It is easy to be victimized in a society like this, but we do not have to take on the victim role. We don't have to take on the victim role. These are also people in the world who are even more unfortunate. There are also people in the world who are even more unfortunate. They are refugees of war, climate change, and economic despair. People in this group are seeking refuge and struggling for their very lives. So wor- you think they would be the ones who are the most likely to have a victim mentality, but they don't. They are often more grateful to be alive. They do not perceive themselves as victims. Instead, they see themselves as survivors. We hear stories of the survivors of World War II concentration camps. Those who lived took on the survivor's role and later they learned to thrive. So, circumstances are not necessarily the determining factor for people to fixate on the victim's role. The primary reason is your ego. It wants to maintain control, so it takes any opportunity to move along the pathway of disintegration to its unhealthy type and puts the ego firmly in control. It doesn't matter how unhappy you are or what pain you experience, it will do anything to maintain control. Talking about the ego. When this happens, it manifests in one of the typologies listed above, we talked about. So, learning to thrive, here we go. The misconception is that those who thrive have abundant material things and resources, but this couldn't be farther from the truth. Most people who see themselves as thriving are not financially wealthy and simply content. To thrive is to live with conscious intent, to feel fulfilled and satisfied. So, thriving is not about money or possessions, but peace of mind. Chances are we will need to deal with the programming from the cultural narrative. Learning to thrive is different for everyone. You get that? Learning to thrive is different for everyone. One thing is common, and they can accept new ideas more readily. You might call them free thinkers or healthy skeptics, okay? So, it raises several questions. How does this fixation occur? What thinking or behaviors do we associate with them? When we fixate, we become stuck in a particular mindset that affects our lives. It shows up in our self talk, in our values, and in our behaviors. Surviving is the first point on the road to your goal of being able to thrive. Here's a process you can use to move beyond the victim mindset. Number one, identify the coping strategy of the victim mindset. You have to identify the coping strategy of the victim mindset. Our first step on this journey is to identify coping strategies. And we're going to read the nine main, we already read those unhealthy coping strategies, descriptions, and find those uh, you use. So if there is a favorite, this is likely your primary strategy. Number two, find how this strategy fits with our personality. Use the Enneagram to identify your personality and instincts. The unhealthy methods you use to cope will more than likely relate to the dominant personality type and the personality type at the point of disintegration. Here is where you can find the thought scripts that run the show. Now you know which ones you need to delete. Number three, deal with the original fear and pain. See, You have to get down to the basics. You have to deal with the original fear and pain. Dealing with your fear is the hard part of the whole process. The best strategy is to use the Enneagram and find the self talk scripts hiding the pain point or points. Now, these are the issues we need to face. Facing your pain points is where the real inner work begins. This is nice. You must use the proper approach to dealing with the underlying pain and fear. There isn't a one size fits all process to this. Many people need help in this process. So don't be afraid. Don't be so. And sometimes it's not pride. Pride. Sometimes people can be embarrassed for to ask for help, but please get some help. Okay. Another tool you can use that gets below the conscious level of the mind is a process we call comparative analysis. It helps you see your cultural programming by comparing your beliefs with similar ones in other systems. Now, identifying unhealthy coping mechanisms. The transition from victim to survivor is an important step. It is possible to slide back and forth from the survivor to the victim mentality. Be mindful of your self talk and habitual behaviors. The Enneagram personality profile can help you see how you leverage these coping mechanisms. Movement along the path of disintegration happens for two reasons. First, something threatens the control of the ego, or second, when we are under mental or physical stress. So, learning about default personality and its tendencies is an excellent way to find emotional equilibrium. All right. So, if you identify with only one of the above victim typologies, you will have a good idea of your default personality type. However, many victims identify with more than one. This is another of the similarities between the victim and the survivor. So, although you initially disintegrate within your basic triad, your ego will continue around the circle adopting tactics to ensure it maintains control of your awareness. That ego is something else, isn't it? The Enneagram of personality directions of disintegration, and I'm going to go on. And this is another exercise. You'll need to know the Enneagram default personality type. Then you can do the research and research how the ego is using unhealthy coping strategies to compensate. Then you can find a free online Enneagram test. How about that? But the more accurate versions are not free. Keep that in mind, okay? The more precise versions have between 140 and 150 questions to cross reference the nine types, okay? Beyond unhealthy coping mechanisms. Going from a victim to a survivor is a significant step, okay? But it's not the goal. Remember, you're going to move on to the thriver. My time is running out. I think I'm also finished almost. Learning to thrive no matter your situation is possible. First, you must identify where you are on the continuum of mindsets and then identify any unhealthy coping strategies you use. The last step is the challenging part. Now you must face the fear and pain behind your mindset. No one has a perfect life. Things happen that are out of our control. Sometimes we compound this by making the wrong choices so we can develop unhealthy coping mechanisms to get by. That is it. I am finished. Oh my goodness. So you see the source there. So I am not going to try to get back to that source, but to tell y'all that, but I am going to get back here so I can sign off You are wonderful. I love you so much, and I do thank you for being here with me. And please, I am a certified counselor, and if you need some help from me, I am here. Okay, I love you so much. I love you so much. You can message me, you can call me. However, you know how to get in touch with me. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is Point of View with Miss Shirley Polk. We're talking about the help that we need moving from victim to survivor to thriver. And many of us have done it. I love you so much.